Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our very first special and also live Parents Lounge. We're here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania at Phenomenology. I'm your Jace. I'm going to do ventriloquism tonight. This is my puppet, Jace.
Whoop. Let's hear it from the crowd. Welcome to Gettysburg! Wow, the roar of thunderous applause from all fours of them.
It was a small turnout, but I want to understand there's a fish fry that was a much bigger deal. Anyway, I'm your host, Jason Gown. With me, as always, is my partner in crime, Mr. Jamie Kaler, coming live from Los Angeles.
Honestly, you could have just flown me in, but on a positive note, you did get me out of a kid's birthday party that I was supposed to go to. I was like, I have a show, I have to do a show. So thank you.
Don't worry, I called them, and they're going to hold off and wait for you to be done.
Thanks, Schrader. I love that. Thank you, man. Really helpful,
buddy. We're here for you.
I know you are. I know.
So with us tonight is, of course, our good buddy Dave Schrader from the Holzer Files, and his co-star, also from the Holzer Files, Mr. Shane Pittman, and our writer friend / handsomest guy in the world, Mr. Jeff Belanger's with us today.
No. That's because we had to start it, though. It was the monkeys just follow the leaders. That's the way it works.
And also with us is my special co-host, my eldest child, Mr. Jace Gowan.
Well, Maury Colbert is here, and we're going to reveal the truth about that story in a few minutes.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know. So, Jace, how you having? Are you having a good time this weekend?
Yeah.
Tell the people what you did.
I climbed the big rocks.
Oh, at Devil's Den. So what we fought what war would happen there? The Civil War?
Yes.
Can you tell us about the Civil War?
When your man and Captain America fight each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
And nothing to do with slavery.
No, nothing to do with it.
So anyway, all of us here are dads. And have you guys ever had your children come to you and have a paranormal experience?
Yeah.
Jeff, you want to start talking about?
Yeah. So a couple times, my daughter would. I remember when she was like 11 months old, like just that sitting up, totally adorable stage, And she was in our living room, and at one point, like this strange smell of like really flowery soap overcame the room, and my daughter looked into the corner where there's nothing, and she gave this big smile and wave, and my wife and I are looking at each other like, and my wife's like, that's my grandmother's soap, like it's a distinct smell. Our grandmother's passed long ago, right? And she's like. And then like the smell went away, and my daughter went back to just playing with her little toys or whatever. And we looked at each other like it just felt like a visit, right? Just
a stop by. 5
seconds, 10 seconds, and then wave to nothing, and then back to what she was doing, and it was gone. That was just the first one. But yeah, we're all looking at each other like, whoa.
Has she had more recent? Because she's
14 now. Yeah, so she's 14. And then she'd see things in her room, but it's tough to tell, is imagination or like really seeing things. But she went to a haunt right outside of Boston for like a school trip. And I was like, oh, you're going to George's Island. Like, there's the black lady in black of George's Island ghosts, like that they're seen. And she swears she was down in one of the tunnels and saw this woman in the black dress that's goes back to like the Civil War times and whatever. And she told her friends, and I was like, I wasn't there. I don't know if I put that notion in her head, but she still swears by it to this day.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Shane, what about you?
Yeah, so I've had two of my kids have experiences. My 13-year-old son, whenever he was 5 years old, he said that a man would come to him in his room. His name was Jack Woden, and he had makeup on his face, like almost like clown makeup. And he would be so terrified, he'd come into the room and be crying, saying he didn't want to go back into his room. And this happened for a year and a half, 2 years. And so that I knew it was something because it was a consistent story, consistent name. And then my daughter, she's
wait a minute. Did you ever look into it to see if there was a clown that lived there?
Yeah, we looked into it, but I couldn't find any history or any deaths
or none that you were willing to admit to.
Right.
Was that why you called me with the tarp and shovel request?
Look, we're getting a little too personal. All right, not on live on a live broadcast.
Okay, man.
So then my daughter, she's 16. Whenever she was about 4 years old, this was all in the same farmhouse that we lived in. And she was 4 years old, and she saw a woman in red, like a red dress, standing at the foot of her bed, shushing her at night. She woke up to the woman doing that and came into her room, same thing, didn't want to go back in her room. So, yeah, they both had experiences, but I have two others that didn't. So
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
How
So,
you have 4 total?
yeah.
And what age ranges?
So I have an 18-year-old son, a 16-year-old daughter, 13-year-old son, and an 8-year-old daughter.
Very cool. Dave, you have like 84 children, so I
Yes.
know for sure that there's stories here.
Well, actually, kind of in the vein of Jeff's, when my second son Nathan was born, my grandfather had passed away back in 1990. So it was when my oldest son had turned 2, and my oldest son was named after him. Okay, so there was this great bond between them. But my younger son came along in 1998, so it was long after my grandfather had passed away. And he was very little. He wasn't even really talking. It was just that mama, papa, 1 or 2 little syllable words. But we never talked about my grandfather around him because he's not really going to understand it. So it never came up. And one day we're driving, and I'm driving in the car, and I've got the rear view mirror pointed at his car seat, and so our mirrors can interlock. And he's looking off to the side, and he's and I look up at him and I go,
Oh, sounds good. Yeah.
I'm gonna find Mount Everest. I don't blame
He's
him.
having an experience right now, it sounds like.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Schrader
But
killed
if
it.
I
I'm
had to talk to
sorry,
every
everyone.
child that felt uncomfortable around me.
Schrader starts talking to kids like, excuse me, I gotta get out of here.
Jason's back telling his mom, this guy's full of shit.
That was a smooth
I'm gonna start recording
Yeah, that was pretty
Schrader. I'm gonna make an app where it's just recordings of Schrader, and then I'll play it for my kids at night, just so it scare them to stay in their
Well, I'll
bed.
give you this isn't even a creepy story, but so I looked up at him and I said, Nathan, and he turned and looked at me in the mirror. And my grandfather had a very distinct nickname. Okay, I don't tell anybody what it is because I'm still hoping a medium will connect me and give me that nickname. So we'll just call him Shoelace was the nickname, just a random word he would not normally say. And I looked at him and I go, "Who are you talking to, Nathan?" And he turned and looked at me, and he got this beautiful smile, and he goes, "Shoelace." And then he turned back and smiled and so I looked up in the rearview mirror and I said, "Shoelace, I love you. But if you show up in this car, the two of us are joining you a lot faster than you expected." So that was a cool little kind of saying grandparent visiting moment. But we've had a lot of those experiences of just little things. So I don't know where you guys stand, but I've been open with what I do in the paranormal. But I don't push it on my kids at all. If they have an interest and they want to talk to me about it, but I never try to make it scary. I want to dig deep and find the history and the information. And that's what I've loved doing with my kids is digging into why this place would be haunted. Who do you think why would they be haunting? And then trying to take away the stigma of fear and kind of replace it with history and making it fun, which I really applaud. Jeff has done a great job with that with his books and making it easier, especially his books, Who Haunts the White House?
Yeah, right.
Which is also available in audiobook and stars Dave Schrader as one of the former presidents. So, but that's
Which
neither here nor
president?
there. It's actually on Amazon.com. Yes. What?
I don't remember which president you did.
I don't either. It doesn't matter. But I'm on there. So I think that's been a big element for us about trying to help educate my kids when they have an interest, and when they fall out of interest with it, that's fine too.
What about you, Jamie? Have your kids ever had an experience that they've come to you about?
Well, in the same vein as Jeff, yeah, of course. They're like, I talked to grandma last night or something, and grandma had passed like 6 months earlier. And then they'll say very specific things about that you're like, how did you know that? But you're kind of wondering, is it in passing? But here's the beauty of children is, and I was talking to this, I went to this improv class the other day. This guy was teaching this corporate improv class, and it was teaching people as they got older to go yes and to be more conversational and to be open. It would, it helps you in business to be more personable and to just agree to yes. And he said this really interesting thing, which I thought of after we started talking about kids, is that when we're little kids, we say yes to everything. Like everything's a yes, and we want to play and we want to go, and we're so open. So as you know, the empathy that they all have to just give of themselves is amazing. And as we get older and older, we close off, and only certain people can then have that connection with people. But as kids, they just are outgoing. But in the same way, they are, you have to take everything they say with a grain of salt, because my kids are terrified of imaginary monsters that live under their bed, but they'll sprint into open traffic. It's like there's no my kids, if like two of the food groups on their plate touch, complete meltdown. But if a dude in a white panel van offers them candy, they're gone. That's the end of those children. Like there's no, like there's this beauty and this excitement and youth and everything, but you're like, I have to keep you alive for the next few years. So, I always take it with a grain of salt, but sure, they have said very specific things in an odd way where you're like, did she talk to them in a private moment, or did they really have a nice visit last night? I don't know. But either way, I think it's great. And in the same way that Dave was talking about history, I think it's a great way for kids to keep their ancestors alive, especially when it's a family member who's passed, and it keeps their memory alive. And so it's always a beautiful moment. It's never a scary thing or anything. It's always been very positive when they have events like that.
I had an experience, my niece, she's 15 this year. When she was 3, my grandfather passed. Well, no, he passed before she was born, but around 3, she started throwing a baseball the same, like he had a very distinct style in the way he threw. And she started throwing like that. My sister said to her,
like a 3-year-old girl?
Yeah.
Your grandpa threw like a 3-year-old girl. All right.
Now,
I'm not here to
not
judge.
the same.
Oh, okay.
I wish we could mute Schrader. Anyway, so the way she threw was a very distinct style. And my sister said to her, "Who taught you to throw like that?" And she said, "Grandpa did." And she never met him. He had passed before she was born. Have you yourself ever had an experience? I mean, you hosted Haunted Live, but have you yourself?
It's funny because I got brought into this world by hosting that show. And the reason I got that show is because I hosted a history show for Discovery. And so I'm a huge history buff. And the fact that you guys are at Gettysburg without me really bums me out, because I think it's just so, the stories, you talk to your son about that, and it's like he would be perhaps fighting his brother in a war, like in the Civil War.
And he may.
He still may. Who knows what's going to happen? But it was such a time where families were torn apart, and we can't even imagine that. I guess we can.
Yeah, we can.
Actually, you know what, Schrader? No, you know what? You're right. It's coming again. Maybe Gettysburg will be Gettysburg 2. It'll be the sequel. But I'm such a big history buff, and so they knew that, and they brought me from America Facts versus Fiction. It was like, hey, can you be in Nashville tomorrow? And I flew out to host the Tennessee Wraith Chasers. And it was really my first introduction to this whole world. And I really I hadn't had that landmark experience that kind of brought me into it. And then, some really weird stuff happened with that. And then Dave and I went on to host Haunted Salem Live. And that night there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So I don't know. It's just been this nutty thing. But I will tell you, when the very first episode I did with the Tennessee Wraith Chasers, we're talking about kids, and they were doing an event in the house, and they had gone up to this great Civil War mansion, super cool, so much history in it. And they came out and they were talking to me, and they were like, "Hey man, there's all kinds of activity in there, and some up in the nursery. It's getting pretty scary up in there." And I go, "Dude, trust me, I got kids. They are terrifying." Huge laugh, like everything blows up and they're laughing. And then after everyone, the producers were all like, "Hey, maybe tone the jokes down just to scooch on the thing." But I thought it was so great. It was so funny to be brought in. But I mean, I remember certain nights and certain events where like nothing could be explained, and I wasn't sure, and I was kind of just brought into that world, and it was really exciting.
Jamie brings up an interesting point, because you're all funny guys. Have you ever found doing paranormal television where do you feel it's just unnatural for them to stop the humor in some of the places?
No.
Yeah.
We've complained about this for, 12 years?
Yeah.
15 years? Right? We're just like, realistically, when you're in a ghost hunt, right? Like you're in the middle of Waverly Hills and it's quiet and it's getting tense and you're a little bit scary, and then Dave farts. right?
And he does.
And he does.
Allegedly.
Every time.
Yeah. And everybody laughs and cracks up, and it's a moment of levity, and like you know, like that's real life, and it's super funny sometimes. Or like you hear something and like I just got this EVP, and you're like, you had Taco Bell for dinner,
Yeah.
right? And your stomach is just, you know, and there's so many shenanigans that I think add so much to the real experience. TV doesn't want to see any of that.
Well, actually, I've liked that shows like Ghost Nation and Ghost Adventures have lightened up.
Yeah, this has been
Because when they started, everybody, you know, when we started, had to be very serious about this. We're following in the footsteps of Dr. Hans Holzer. He was not
really known for his
prankster.
comedy. No.
Yeah.
So we had to be very cautious. But there were moments like in one of the episodes, believe it or not, when we were in this location in second season, there's a little kid's ghost down in the basement, and those freak me out. That really just unnerves the hell out of me. And so I said, well, Shane, why don't you go to the basement? And Shane turned to me and goes, fuck you, you go to the basement. And we all burst out laughing. And he goes, I'm not kidding, you go to the basement. And they cut it out.
And then
I
people
thought,
are asking,
yeah,
Shane, why don't you ever do that? And it's like, I did, but they cut everything.
see, what I think is a fun point to that, though, is what's missing in the paranormal field with those aspects is having the levity, because it takes you out of the constant stress. And then when something scary does happen moments later, it really jumps back at you.
Yeah.
But that's been a weird element, because Shane and I have a lot of fun out on the road filming and joking around and stuff. But you know, talking about parenting and the paranormal and dealing with ghosts, the one thing I've had a hard time discussing with my kids is when we talk about the concept of children's ghosts. And if you've watched, Shane and I have both gotten very emotional on the show regarding when we've come across little girl ghosts. And Shane was in the basement at what was the name of the house? Barnstable House, and had this really remarkable moment. And where we might have walked off out on it, he went back down, talked to this little girl who's known to be down there, listened to the recording, and all of a sudden there's this little girl kind of calling back out and seeking help. And it was really powerful. And you can see it reflected on Shane.
Does no one hear me? That's what she said. I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to have that happen. So you've got this child's ghost, but you know, how do you explain that to the kids? The one thing I've brought up, speaking to a lot of our medium friends, and if this makes anybody else feel more comfortable, they're saying, listen, that might have been their last iteration. They were a child when they passed, but that soul may be 300 years old and may have been Alexander the Great and Lizzie Borden and Elvis Presley at some point. This was just the last stop. So the soul's much older than what they're, you know, putting out there. So that made me feel better about the concept, but then it doesn't answer why they're crying like a child who's lost. And that, do you think that's something demonic, or do you think children's spirits can be left behind? That's weird to me.
So to me, like the simplest definition of a haunting, right, is it's the past coming to the present.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more haunting to a parent than a kid saying, you know, I'm lost, I need help? Like, it's the scariest thing ever. And we've all been in the grocery store. You turn around, you're like, where'd they go? Or department store, anywhere, right? And you're like, they were right there 1 second ago, and now they're gone. And they've been abducted, they've been panicked, and then they're tugging on your other pant leg, right? And you're like, So I think that part of the reason this stuff sticks around is because we literally conjure it. We conjure our worst nightmare into some of these places. And you know, what if it's like sort of like this movie that just plays over and over, and you're queuing that one up because of where you are and who you are, that you're a dad and you've got your own emotional connections. I really hate to jump to the demonic thing. Like, it's just, you know, I never go there pretty much. But to me, could it be some, you know, it's our worst nightmare. Right. And we let that haunt us, because if this forces us to be a little more vigilant when we go home, it helped. Right. You're like in the grocery store, you're like, yeah, now I got the child leash. And she's 14.
You know, it's funny, right? I had, I've trained my kids in two things. I have this insane whistle that I create with my own mouth.
Do it or you can't.
Oh. And when I'm outside, it carries for a mile. So, my kids can hear it from, all I have to do is open the window and blow the whistle, and they come flying. And I also have this extremely booming voice.
Really?
It was at the Mall of America in Minnesota when it had first opened, and it was packed. And I went with my son, Cliff, who was like 5-6 years old at the time. And I'm standing there and wonder, just, wow, this place is amazing. And I turn and look, and my son's nowhere to be seen. And it's a sea of people. And I was with Tim from Darkness Radio, and he goes, "Where's Cliff?" And I go, "I don't know. We're looking around." And I literally, like Jesus, just throw my hands up and I go, "Clifford!" And the whole fucking place just stopped. The entire Mall of America. And then I just hear, "I'm over here, Dad." And he comes cutting through the crowd. So it was a parenting win, I think. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're trained to the dog whistle or the scream, the hurricane hippo holler, I call it, and brings them out of the ductwork. But that's terrifying when you're somewhere and your kids are horribly evil, right? Because they wait for your most vulnerable moment, right? You're looking at in a store window at something you want, and then boom, your kid's gone. Yeah. And then you're thinking, but I really want that.
Should I go look for them?
I mean, I can get in quick and buy it and then go look for them, but it's the balance.
Yeah. How much head start you want to give?
Look at Jamie judging me. Look at that look. Like a pure judgment. He's like,
I am you. No, I do the exact same thing. My wife would go, "We got to start looking." I go, "I'm not moving." Hello. And she goes, "Really?" And I go, "Watch." And they come running around. I go, "Yeah, what do I care? That's the problem. Wives care what other people think. I don't. I just yell out in the middle of the store and they come running.
Well, it's like, didn't you just have that problem? I think you talked about it on the Parent Lounge a couple of weeks ago, where one of your kids Jace wandered off.
Yeah. So my oldest, he's the little guy who was here. I was being unfair because apparently Cool Ranch Doritos are not a suitable breakfast food, and I tried to convey that.
What?
And it was so unfair. And he's like, "I hate it, and I'm leaving." And so he packed a pair of pajamas, his favorite stuffed animals, one pair of socks, a couple of shirts,
and the Cool Ranch Doritos.
Well, no, that was the hot point. And he's like, "I'm leaving." I'm like, "See ya." And he went out the fence, and so I went like stealth mode, and I'm like peeking over, watching. He immediately goes and he's like trucking along. He also took $1, so he had money to eat.
Right, of course.
And he got to the neighbor's yard, and the neighbor lady, who is also Judy Judgerton for our neighborhood, is out there, and she's like, "Jace, what's wrong?" And he immediately puts on the waterworks. He's like, "Mom and Dad threw me out, and I don't have anywhere to live anymore." And I'm like, I come marching out, and she's already. So I'm like, oh, so like 6 out of our 7 neighbors are not fans of the stuff that they see go on at our house. But I mean,
Tell us about the one.
Huge fan. Huge fan.
They came in the middle of COVID. They didn't obviously they bought the house online from Florida, and they just moved into the house, and like they've seen some shit already. Just some shit.
Give them time.
It's funny, though, that in all the online pictures of the house when they were buying it, all the neighbors around Jason are holding up "Welcome to our neighborhood" signs to block the Gowan's house from being seen.
Yeah, it's a dark place. But anyway, like there's just this something. Well, we also had an incident that we've talked, Jamie, and you and I've talked about this, where in the middle of the night, we went in, and sometimes you go in and you check on your kids in the night. And I went in, and it was 2 a.m. and he's not there. And I'm like,
"Did you go look for the car keys?"
Well, the suitcase and the socks are here, so I guess we're fine. And I become frantic because we're not finding him. We're calling him. Nothing. The door is unlocked because my wife had let the dogs out, but she didn't relock it. I'm like, oh my God, he's gotten outside the house. And I'm out in the neighborhood yelling. And as I said, I'm not well liked in the neighborhood as it is. And I'm screaming out there. And I'm like, what could, because did somebody sneak in here and take him? Did he run away? I mean, all these awful scenarios played in my head as to what could be happening. And I came back into the twins' room, and I heard not a twin snore. And I'm like looking for where it's coming from, because it's coming from underneath the twins' crib. And it is a dresser drawer that pulls out. Yeah. And I pulled it out, and he had taken all of the clothes out and laid inside and pushed himself back up in and was sleeping inside the drawer.
Eddie Munster? What is this?
He went full Eddie Munster on it. So, like, have you ever had that where you're like,
first of all,
I've never had that. I want to stop you there. I've never had that.
I want to applaud you as a good father that you know the sound waves of your twin snorings. That's not one of the twin snores.
There's a higher pitched whistle.
Is-
Yeah, it's a whistle.
Dude, he just wanted a little privacy. That's all. I get it. Listen, I would love that.
Yeah.
The other night I was watching a vampire film and I wasn't scared at all, but I thought the coffin looked super comfortable, man. Got satin, little pillow on it. Like if Costco lid closes, very quiet. If they made one with like a TV at the end and a little slide refrigerator, I would buy one right now and put it in the garage every night.
What are we doing talking about it? Let's start building one.
Build them. That way,
Like a Tokyo Hotel.
if you die in your sleep, it's easy disposal.
Yeah,
Right.
No mess. They go, just take that thing right out of there. We're perfect. Yes.
It's good thinking.
Have you lost your kids before, Jamie? Like, have yours just turned up missing?
No, but after this, CPS
I
is
have tried. I've tried everything. I cannot lose them. I have tried to lose them. It's funny, dude. So when I was a kid, I'd forgotten this, but apparently I must have been like 4 or 5 years old. I was a little kid in Massachusetts, and my mother tells me this story that all of a sudden it was like 10:30 at night, and they got a phone call from the neighbor, and the neighbor was like, "Hey, where's your son? Where's Jamie?" And they're like, "He's up in bed." And they're like, "I don't think he is." I was on their front lawn sleeping. I had walked out of the house, walked next door. I had a blanket. I was one of those like blanket kids, and I had a blanket, and I was on their front lawn, unconscious, sleeping at like 11 p.m. I guess I slept walk as a kid. One night I woke up. This was like in high school, and none of my sheets were on my bed, none of it, and we couldn't. I was like, whatever. I went to go to school later that day, and I went through the garage, and that we had a big ladder in the garage. It was like a 2-story garage, and all my sheets and blankets were hanging over the ladder in the garage. Not the craziest. When I was a kid, I was like, well, everybody sleepwalks like that. And then I got older, and everyone was like Jeff's like, no, I'm going to stop you right there.
Nobody sleeps like that.
I'm trying to unpack it. Like,
I walked.
how did we get
as
to
an
that point?
adult? One of my little ones did when she was really little. She would sleepwalk, and but they kind of stopped. They kind of grew out of it, I guess. Has anyone else had kids sleepwalk on them?
Yeah, my oldest son did, and it was bad. Like I'll embarrass him. It was bad. He'll walk and like he'll have conversations that make no sense whatsoever with maybe somebody, or he's just talking to himself. Then he'd go into a corner and like almost like get ready to go to the bathroom and stuff whenever he was young. So yeah, he did a lot of really weird.
I mean, I did that in college, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah, that's a whole different scenario.
Blackout.
My two paranormal like encounters at home. My son Linus was very little, sleeping between my wife and I in bed one night, and he's like 3 years old, and all of a sudden he just sits straight up and he goes, "Oh shit!" really loud. Which, when you are awoken by a little kid yelling, "Oh shit," you know bad things are happening, right? I threw an elbow, I hit him, and I rolled off my bed because I don't know what my thinking was, but it's like, if they don't see me, they can eat the wife and kid. I'm okay.
Right. That's good thinking.
Yeah, and then the other time when ghost hunters had first come out, remember how they were encountering all those like Jawa-sized ghosts?
Yeah.
They were all very small cloaked figures, right? Well, to come into my room, you come in through the door, and it's closest to my wife's side of the bed. Mine was close to the window because I'm the breadwinner and I need to escape. Right. So if a killer comes in, it only made sense at the time. And I wake up hearing, and I look, and there's this little dark figure running from my side of it. That means something was in my room on my side of the bed, and it's booking around the bed towards my wife. Now, being a good husband,
You pushed her down?
Yeah, I shoved her and screamed. No, I reached over her and I grabbed it by the throat, and I cocked my fist back, and I hear, "Daddy?" And she goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just hugging you, honey." My wife's like, "What in God's name is going on?"
Hugging her with your hand around her neck.
What do you explain? I got to think of how
The
she's going to talk
Schraders
about it
love in a
school the
different
next
way.
day.
It's a one-hand hug. It's an Irish thing, a one-hand hug.
Oh, I'd clock a kid in a second. I love children, but if a black-eyed kid shows up at my door, they're getting a throat punch, and I'm running.
I was at a haunted house at the Carowinds Amusement Park in South Carolina, and we got through the end part, and there were all these like sheets hanging down, kind of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know we're close to the end. I'm like, obviously the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy is gonna pop out at some point here, and I'm prepared mentally for just that one event. And this little girl, maybe she was probably 13 or 14, in ghost makeup, like the ring girl, popped up right in front of me. And as I said, I had only prepared for just the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I let out the least manly shriek, and I punched her directly in the face. She drops to the ground. I was with Tim Yancey. He goes, why is security coming? And the security guards came, and they're like, did you punch her? I was like, she kind of started it.
Yeah.
And,
You had it coming.
and I'm no longer welcome at the Carowinds amusement park during Halloween time.
Just another one on the list, Jason.
That's like it's like Fright Night at Universal Studios, right?
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
basically
exactly.
people waiting to jump out and shock you, and you're like, bam! You're like, dude, that's on you, man. You should.
We were going through they had the Walking Dead maze that you go through.
Yeah.
And my wife had come out to California. It was between shooting of Holzer Files. She'd come out and we're walking through, and it was great because it was this mom with like 6 kids in front of us. And the one kid, he was really, really very small little guy, right? But he was probably their age. He was just a much shorter kid. And he's like climbing up the girls' backs and screeching through this entire thing. And my wife and I'm in tears watching this kid through the whole thing. It could have been the scariest thing in the world. I'd never know, because all I could see was this kid crawling up everybody and around and screaming. And we get out. I hand to God, we get out. And the mom had been pretty far ahead. She turns around. She goes, how'd you guys like it? And the little kid goes, it wasn't bad. And I just I go, I think you need to check all these other kids for scratch marks, because this one probably clawed them all. But I love the pure reaction of fear from a child. It's nothing better.
Do you have any good scare stories with your daughter?
No, she loves scary stuff. Loves scary movies. Like, it has since long before it was appropriate. And in my proud parenting moments, I'm like, yeah, we can watch that. Like, how bad could it be? And you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
So scary movies, loves all that stuff. We've taken her to some of the haunts, the jump scares. She get like, I'm such a nerd when it comes to story. I'm picking it apart. I'm like, okay, so like this is Hitchcock, right? The girls walking down the hall, and the scary monsters behind the door, and there's so much tension, and then the phone rings and everybody jumps because you're waiting for the monster. And then she's like, yeah, it's going to be a jump scare, and then the tension builds, and like she's picking apart stuff. So she's right.
That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway.
Wow, so you've already got a program.
Destroyed it. Yeah, I've shown her all the magic tricks. Like, they don't really saw the woman in half, honey. Let me show you how it works. Well, yeah, they do.
Okay. Do you guys ever use terror to try to control your children?
Every day.
I'm sorry, is there another way?
I don't. My kids, even though I don't do the paranormal on them, I used to, like, when they tried to go downstairs at night and I didn't want them down there, I told them, I said, well, it's past 8. That's when the zombies come out in the basement. That's why we're never down there. Sure. And my kids would just stand at the top of the stairs with that terrified blank look, not sure if they wanted. And once in a while I'd catch them testing it, and they'd start getting down there, and they'd get halfway, and I'd lean over and you'd watch those kids come flying up the stairs. And I'm like, what's wrong? Nothing. But I use that for a short period of time. Then that stopped scaring them. The only thing that scared them was the alligators under the stairs.
Those are
so zombies, not so much.
Yeah.
Demons, ghouls,
alligators. Is there a big alligator problem in Minnesota?
Minnesota, under stair alligators are the worst. You don't even know. They pop up, and man, you're doomed.
So you say you won't do paranormal stuff with your kids?
No.
I keep my Ouija board under my daughter's pillow. That's probably not the best spot. Where's Dad's Ouija? Oh, right, under the pillow.
Oh my God.
Is it at least like the sparkly ones? Or?
It's the glow in the dark one, and I like to put my hand on it and then light it up, so then you see the handprint, and then
And then when Jeff's drunk, he goes in and spells out "die" on her sheets and ketchup. So when she pulls the sheet back, that's already waiting for her. It's good.
Anyway.
And then she critiques the story of it.
Look at the constant look of judgment from Jamie Taylor. He's like, I thought I was a horrible parent.
I feel left out. Oh, dude, no. We've talked about this before, but they did studies on, civilizations that are still living in the Stone Ages, right? In the middle of the Amazon or the Inuit. And basically, they were surprised that we didn't use that more often, because in the Inuit culture, they use monsters very specifically that live in the ocean, giant crazy monsters, because if the kid gets to, it's to save the kid's life.
Right.
So they create monsters very specifically. And then when the kid gets old enough to go, hey, don't go near the water, you're going to drown. Then they go, that monster's not real. In the same way we use, Elf on the Shelf is basically a monster that we use to control the kid, or Santa Claus to go, hey, sticks and, coal, you're going to get coal because you are a shitty child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're still using that. But we should use it more often to go like streets, like with busy traffic, you go, well, there's a giant monster. There's a 2-ton monster that lives there that's going to run you over. Like I kind of do that in a way. My daughter, she kept coming to sleep in our bed. I don't know. I might have told you this before, Jason.
I've heard it. Yeah.
She came to sleep in our bed all the time. And I was killing me, because you have that Sophie's choice of trying to let her sleep next to you all night and kick you and keep you awake, or exert the energy to carry this wet 50-pound bag of cement back to her room, and you smash her head on the closet door, and your wife's like, what's that? And you're like, don't worry about college for this one, probably trade school. And then you put her back to bed, And so after like 3 nights of this, I'm losing it. And I finally go, hey, what is happening? And she goes, Dad, there's spiders in my bed. And I said, there's no spiders in your bed. Look, and I showed her, no spiders. And she did it again the next night. So the next day she goes, they're not here now, but when I wake up in the middle of the night, there's spiders. And so finally I said, look, I took your bed apart. I found all the spiders. I got them out. There's no more spiders in your bed. And she goes, oh, phew. And I go, but I did take all those spiders and I spread them out all on the floor around your bed. And I put some of them in the hallway down towards our room. So what I'm saying is if you stay in your bed, you're probably safe. But if you get out of that bed tonight, I can't protect you. And she was like, what? And she slept in her bed that night. She stayed in her bed and she didn't get out of her bed again for a while. I kept saying the spiders under your bed, do not get out of that bed in the middle of the night. And she slept in her own bed. So I'm a big proponent of fear. Like my friends won't even yell at their kids. They go, we don't yell ever. And I go, they need to be afraid of you a little bit. Because otherwise this whole society, these kids are going to grow up and go out into the real world and not be prepared for it because they've been like, wait, everything's been given to me my whole life. No one's ever yelled at me or told me no or anything. And now what? My daughter yesterday, she was picking on her little sister repeatedly. And so finally she took her mask off in the pool and whipped it. And I have the video, actually. It's crazy. I turned the video on. It was the 1 second she did it. She threw her mask and hit the other one right in the face, the bully. And the bully started screaming and crying and came to me and I said, you were picking on her. And sometimes the bully need to get punched in the face. And yeah, you learned your lesson. Leave the kid alone. Keep poking the tiger, you're going to get smashed. And I think kids nowadays kind of need that. They need a little fear in life to kind of get ready for the real world, man, because life's not fair. You're not going to get
your daughters over to beat up my kids then, please?
Please. I'll send the little one. She's a terror, man. She like scratches, punches. The other one's like, whoa.
Jason keeps telling me how his one son is evil, the other two are decent. And he comes walking up to my table here at Gettysburg at Phenomenology. And he comes walking up and he's got the double twin stroller. And he comes up and he goes, oh, this, and Jason's like, hi, Dave. And so sweet. And his other son smiles at me. And I kid you not, Jamie, this is his other son. He's got his head turned to me and he just gives me the side eye glare and won't break. But the whole time he's like, glare. And I go, this one wants to kill me. And he goes, I know.
Isn't it crazy how your kids can be so different? Like my kids are 18 months apart. Nothing changed in their upbringing, and yet they are night and day. The youngest one loves horror. She sat and watched Jurassic Park with me when she was like 4 and was like, the dude gets eaten in the bathroom, and she's like, yeah. And then the other one, we tried to show her Willow, the movie Willow, and she had a meltdown. And then so I used Willow for like 3 weeks. Every time she was bad, I go, I put her on, and she was like, oh, and like melted. And still to this day, like if I just say the word Willow, she pees herself like The Exorcist. It's crazy.
So what's funny? Like so some of the stories, like Jamie's talking about the monsters and the spiders, you realize like the fairy tales that we tell are Jack and the Beanstalk, right? Jack and the Beanstalk is a story about teaching children like we're the giant, right? The kids are Jack. You can't beat the giant. You're not going to physically beat the giant, but you can outsmart the giant. Right. And like these are tales that we teach them like through metaphor, right? Like there are monsters in the world and this is how you can deal with them. You're not going to take them on physically, but you might outsmart them. That's that moral of that story. But like, so all these old tales and if you look at the Brothers Grimm tales, like Cinderella, the original,
it's
like,
dark.
The stepsisters weren't trying to wedge their feet into the glass slipper. One of them cut her toes off and filled it with blood in an effort to get that glass slipper on. The second stepsister cut her heel off and filled it with blood again, trying to wedge her foot. I mean, they're just much, much darker than what Disney gave us. Right. And the point being like, fear of like blood and bleeding and monsters and evil and good. Kids could understand that, and so I don't know. I'm just saying, maybe we're better parents than we think by creating the monsters under the bed and all this other
Well,
stuff.
we have a natural fear mechanism. That's how we survived, right? Through history. And we're slowly taking that away from kids in a weird way. Like now, the new fairy tales, they're like, oh, you know, the prince kisses her and she's not awake. So we need a cancel culture because he kisses her without asking permission first. You're
That
like,
was a big deal at
that's
Disney.
what you took out of this thing? Yeah, that's the new thing that they're talking about.
Yeah, because they redid the Snow White ride and they include the kiss scene, and it caused like a huge uproar. I saw
People are
that.
like,
That movie
She's-
sucked, for the record.
It's really
Her
boring.
voice, the voice of Snow White, you're like, oh, it's like it hits a note that's just in the back of the head.
it's like a Schrader whistle. Horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It's brutal.
Whistle while you work.
what about you, Shane? What's your style of parenting? Like, how do you deal with when the kids are acting up? What's your way to go?
Don't make me call Uncle Dave.
Why are you using the accent like that? I don't talk like that.
You don't talk like that at all, Shane. Not at all. No way, man. Come on, dude.
My style.
You
of
can almost hear the banjo the minute he opens his mouth.
Okay, that's a little too far.
Oh, really?
Oh, you do have an awful. Ain't got that purty mouth.
Sorry about Gettysburg.
So anyway, to get to the question.
Listen, you're 0-1. In Civil Wars, you're 0-1. But
Hey, so
But in inbreeding, they're still number one.
So it was really shitty being a part of the show. Thank y'all. Have a good time. So anyway, let me calm down. Okay, it's okay. All right. So you guys suck. So my style of parenting is, I'm kind of like how Jamie is. You got to be a little firm with them sometimes because my hellions. Stop it.
Sometimes you just don't let them have whiskey before bed.
That's only special occasion. You asshole. Anyway, but I'm firm with them sometimes because I think that is what's missing, especially in today's culture. You give them everything. They don't have to earn anything. I think that we're getting away from that. Like a lot of the things that I grew up being taught and all of that is something I think we need to carry on, like hard work and all of that good stuff, and not being around people like
he's
that.
Gonna die. It's gonna burst.
But
He's
yeah,
trying so hard.
teaching them they have to earn things if they want them. I'm not just going to give you certain things.
Not all of us get teeth, son.
Dude, my wife came home with this morning. She went up. She went to the little coffee place and she got coffees. And she came home with treats for the kids. And so she got Hannah a croissant. And she goes, "Hey, I got you a croissant." And Hannah wasn't like, "Oh my God, that's so nice. Thank you very much." She was like, "Is it chocolate?" And my wife goes, "No, it's just a regular croissant." She goes, "Well, I like chocolate croissants." And my wife was like, I reached in, grabbed her croissant, and ate the entire thing. It was like, fuck you. What kind of kid doesn't go, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for thinking of me and getting me a croissant," as opposed to going, can you take this back and can you go back up and get me a chocolate croissant? No, dude. And I'm eating your croissant. Now you're not getting any croissant.
No, the right parenting move in that should have shown her what happens in that world. You should have taken it to the fridge, spit on it, put some Hershey syrup on it, and then handed it to her.
That's actually that is a real world. Yes, David, that is absolutely right.
I went a slightly different route. Like,
I believe that's the only other routes out there.
I mean, I did use fear parenting. I took it too far. But
Not you.
So we had a problem with Jace. He would listen to me, but not his mom. Mm-hmm. And so if I left if I ran errands or whatever, as soon as he did something while I was away, he didn't think there was going to be any repercussions and he didn't listen to her. So I took him aside and I'm like, I'm going to have to handle this a different way because he needs to fear his mother. So I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. You had an older sister.
Oh, no.
Wow.
I'm like, have you ever been upstairs in the upstairs bathroom? You ever noticed that door that goes to the crawl space? Yeah. Well, next time you go up there, if you listen real close, she locks Sarah in there because she talked back to him. And he went, "Are you joking?" And I said, "Go ahead and check." And I knew he wasn't going to check. And then 2 weeks later, he decided to check. And I was like, shit. So he comes out and he's like, "I didn't see anything." I was like, "Oh, really? Hold on. I'll go and see if maybe she got off of her chain." And, and so I went up, I grabbed some blankets and I put them around the corner where I knew he hadn't looked. And I was like, "What are you talking about? All her stuff's right here." And he's like, "What?" And he looked in. And I knew he was far enough in that he couldn't see me. And I scratched on the wall on the outside. And every time I go away now, he listens to every single thing his mother says. Because
I love that, dude.
Your son just came back in the room, so be careful.
Oh, Jace,
Hey.
who lives upstairs in the crawl space? Hey,
Again?
who lives upstairs in the crawl space at our house? Who lives up there? Upstairs.
In the bathroom crawl space.
In the bathroom upstairs.
Louise, my sister.
What's her name?
What's her name?
I have no idea.
You've forgotten the name?
Yeah.
It's Sarah.
Sarah.
And
Who cares?
I gotta make a quick call. I'm so sorry. Yes. Social services? Yeah.
are you well? Listen, am I a good dad?
Yes.
All right, you get your $20.
One of my favorite things. This is so horrible. And I love that my older son went along with it. When my son Nathan lost a tooth, he goes, "Dad, I lost a tooth." And I go, "That's cool. Are you excited?" He goes, "Yeah, now I'm going to get adult tooth." And I go, "See, the teeth aren't as bad, but when it's time for your adult legs and arms, it's going to be a little bit more painful." And he goes, "Well, what do you mean?" And my older son Cliff is sitting there and he goes, "Well, look at how small your arms are and look at how big Dad's are. When you get to a certain age, we got to pull off the young ones and put on the old ones."
I love that so much.
And my kid's job. So like every kid going forward has shared that story with the next kid in line, waiting for their adult arms and legs to have to come in.
What's the going rate for the arm fairy?
I can't tell you about that. Oh, this is great too, right? So my son Nathan, he's very little. He comes, and I can cautiously tell this story. He loses a tooth, and I pick him up, and he's coming to my house for the weekend. I said, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "I'm a little upset." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, I lost a tooth." And I said, "Well, didn't you get money?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what happened?" And he goes, "I put it in a plastic bag under my pillow so that it's easier for the tooth fairy to grab it." And I said, "Right." And he goes, "And I couldn't fall asleep, and I saw something moving by the door, so I kind of peeked. And then the door opened, and my stepdad came in." I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "And he put his hand under my pillow." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "And then he left the room." And I said, "Yeah, what happened?" He goes, "I lifted the pillow, and there was $1, and my tooth was gone." And I'm like, "The jig is up." And I go, "Well, what does that mean?" He goes, "He's selling my teeth for more money to the tooth fairy and only giving me $1. So the beautiful nature of children is the fact that he believes there's a black cartel out there for baby teeth.
They also think that there's an arm thing going on too. So
Yeah.
that's
Do you ever wonder, like, as they become adults, what kind of really strange fetishes were born from just these little things?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like someday they're going to be like, "Yeah, pull my arms."
Real slow.
And you're going to be
He's
like,
covering his own ears.
I know.
My arms.
"What do you mean?"
Well, Schrader's son's gonna lose an arm in like a farming accident, and Dave will be like all distraught at the hospital, and the kid will be like, "No, don't worry about that. It's just my first arm. Second one should come back."
My wisdom
Like,
arm.
"No, dude, I gotta tell you something." "Well, no, I'm gonna have to tell you something, brother. Okay, so we lied.
Yeah.
What? Do you have anything you tell your kids that are?
No, I'm perfect.
that are gonna scar your son?
I think we've established Jeff's doing a pretty good job. Yeah.
No, you know what? It's, my kids made it real easy too. Like, you know, she's been pretty easygoing. She's really smart. Like, she's smarter than me. Like, but it has been since like 3. You know, like it becomes obvious. She's just more observant and can pick stuff up. And so I just gotta kind of watch it, you know. And
See, that's how you can tell the difference between a dad with one kid.
Yeah, I was gonna say, dude,
Oh,
one.
my child's great. I really have no problems. The rest of us are trying to figure out which black market we can sell some of ours on.
that's fair.
First of all, people warned me about twins, but they never warned me to the level of destruction that kids at the exact same age can do in a time period. Because like you can do damage, but the twins, it's a hurricane force of destruction that like nobody, like everybody said, oh, it's difficult with twins, but nobody said that like when the egg split, so did the soul. So like each kid just got half. And like Dave said, bring him in.
Bring him in, the evil one, the Dark Lord. We want to see the Dark Lord.
Look at him. Look at the face. He's straight up savage.
He's the
just-
bad one.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, you are correct.
You're the good one, right, buddy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But boys are different too, right? Like, so when my daughter,
Very good. How long did that take you to figure out?
so look, you know, it's like my daughter, like we didn't even have to childproof our house. Like she just didn't get into stuff. I mean, I left the whiskey out, all of it.
Right.
She didn't touch it. But my nephew would come over when he was like 2 or 3, and like everything's broken, and
Right.
like he's knocking. It's like a Tasmanian devil knocking everything over. I'm like, I didn't have this, you know. So
And it's right. You're right. Having my daughters, no real problems as little children. As teenagers, it's a new world. Boys, they see an electrical outlet and they start crawling towards it with their tongue out,
Yeah.
right? You're like,
Yeah.
what's happening here?
Yeah.
Like the thing, like they show you the video about, you know, not hitting your children in proper car seat law, but they should tell you, like show you a video about your child is going to try to kill itself multiple times every day. And they just don't.
All right, Jeff, you want to see? Here's the video. So you have one child.
Yes.
I only have 2. Schrader has 47. Shane 4, by the way, which is weird for such a
That he
young guy
knows about.
that he knows of. But so here's just 2. I love her crying. She took her mask off and whipped it into the other kid's face. It was like, wow, dude, seriously? Okay, whatever.
Nicely done.
How do you like
And that
those?
was after all. I only turned on my camera because they would not stop fighting, and I was trying to tell my wife, because she's always like, she's not with the kids all day, and then she's like, it can't be that bad. I go, oh, it is that bad. No, it is that bad. So I didn't even edit that. I turned on my camera, and within seconds, the fight started. I was like, crazy, all day, every day.
Seeing with multiple children, you get the one that is in the alpha situation, right? And it was funny because my daughter Ripley is just this. She's a pure heart. She's sweet. She's loving. Her sister Pacey's a little bit more of the type A personality who wants the control all the time. And she's the one that's always kind of bullying Ripley. And Ripley was like maybe 2.5 years old. And Pacey would just walk by and hip check her and knock her to the floor. And then one day, I'm sitting on the couch and Ripley's walking towards me with a big smile. Pacey comes up, gives her the hip check. Ripley stands up and goes,
Full Hulk Hogan.
and her head turns unbelievable shades of purple and red. And then without a sound, she flies across the room, hits Pacey, and just unleashes fists.
Yeah.
And then Pacey's screaming for her life and laying on the floor. And then Ripley gets up and goes, and comes over and smiles and cuddles with me while her sister's at a heap. And then I'm like, I feel like I should comfort this one, but this one needs to be applauded for the effort she put in. It's that moment when they snap and that dynamic shifts is awesome too.
Yeah, I remember that with my
Sometimes
sister.
they need to get punched in the face. Just sometimes they need to get punched in the face. I really do. That's a famous Mike Tyson quote. Something about Mike Tyson's quote. He goes, everybody, he goes, the social media world would be so much better if everyone could be punched in the face or something.
Right. Everybody has an opinion until you get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
What
like
were you
that.
saying with your sister?
So when we were growing up, my sister's 4 years older. She was a lot bigger than me, just physically and everything. And she used to push me around mercilessly, right? And I just worshipped her. When my parents were, I was like, one day he's going to be bigger than you. And I remember the day. Like I was in middle school, and like she like pushed me around, and I literally lifted her up and threw her like onto the coffee table and broke the coffee table. And I'm sure it hurt her, but her face is one I will never forget to this day. Just looking at me like, the party's over.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, it is. Right? Thus ends the party. And that was it. After that, no more physical abuse.
You finally snatched the pebble from her palm. Yes, it's your kung fu moment.
Became emotional abuse, but
Yeah.
you know, whatever.
Yeah. That's when women discover poison. It works in a different way.
Well, that's kind of all we have for
Well,
this
do we have
week.
any quick questions?
Oh
from
yeah,
the
yeah.
audience?
Do we have audience questions?
All right, great. Thank you. None of the 9 of them care to speak.
There's 12. There was 12.
Oh, sorry. Do we have questions in the chat?
Are there
Schrader,
questions?
you got to get better at show business. You should say there's 2,000 in the place. What are you doing?
It's
Nobody out there can see. They don't know what's happening. Oh, you should say there's thousands of people out there, and I can't believe how quiet they're all being.
There are thousands of people out there.
There was a fish fry competing, as I said.
Yeah.
Honestly, the fish fry sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's a Gettysburg fish fry. They're known for it.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Anyways, Gabe, thank you guys very much for this special episode of the Parents Lounge. Thank Jeff Belanger, Shane Pittman, and this guy for bringing here, and always my esteemed co-host, Mr. Jamie Kaler. You can catch the Parents Lounge every Tuesday night live at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, at our Facebook at facebook.com/the Parents Lounge. Good night, everybody. Have a good night.
Jason Gowan.